Maria Reis to lift the title. And as Reis put in a less than impressive run, Vaughan posted a time of 2 minutes 13.72 seconds to claim second place, enough to defend her title. Vaughan trails Reis by 176 points in the overall standings with 8 races to go. And that's all you spot from me, Darren.
Sana, thank you very much indeed. I'll be back with more news in just a few minutes, including the latest from Libya as the uprising there continues. Battles have been taking place in strategic towns right across the country. Witnesses say dozens of people have been killed. We'll be speaking to our correspondents inside Libya, but for now, we'll leave you with some colourful scenes from Brazil, where Rio de Janeiro's annual carnival has just opened. Children have been performing the first street processions. The 5-day festivities showcase Brazil's top dance schools with extravagant performances, colourful costumes and street bands. Stay with Al Jazeera. I'll see you in a minute.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines,
most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story, at this time on Al Jazeera.
An uprising on the streets, showing no sign of relenting. Protesters united in their defiance of the regime. As demonstrations continued for a third week, President Mubarak remained unmoved. But how much longer could he ignore the demands of his people and hold on to power? In a day-by-day account, we look at the events that changed Egypt, from those that witnessed them firsthand. Fall of Mubarak, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome to Al Jazeera. If you're just joining us, I'm Darren Jordan. The top stories this hour. In the battle for Libya, opposition fighters say a massacre has been taking place in the town of AlZawiya. A doctor has told Al Jazeera there have been up to 200 casualties after rebel fighters repelled an attack by forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi. Sources have told Al Jazeera government loyalists there are calling for reinforcements from Tripoli. Meanwhile, east of the capital, witnesses in the key oil port of Brega say at least 24 people were killed in clashes there on Friday. Anti-Gaddafi fighters are claiming to be in control of the oil terminal and the city. A different battle is also underway, one for food and fuel. Government loyalists are being accused of trying to starve the opposition by stopping food supplies. Well, for 3 weeks, Libyans have been locked in clashes between supporters of Gaddafi and those who want him gone. Lawrence Lee takes a look at the ongoing battle for the country.
This is the sound of a town fighting to avoid being overrun.
What is happening now is heavy bombing on the city by tanks and heavy weapons and mortars and extremely heavy weapons. And the rebels are struggling to resist with very primitive means. And they have no mercy. They're very brutal. There's a large number of injured and a lot of people killed on the streets. They have no mercy on civilians. The tanks that belong to the regime are attacking anything and everything indiscriminately.
The Gaddafi security forces are gathering up at the outskirts of the city and preparing for another attack. And the revolutionaries here are bracing themselves and reorganizing their lines to prepare themselves to defend the city.
Undoubtedly, the suggestion of Zawiya being gradually taken back by Gaddafi will be seen as a sign that he's regaining ground, although it's a mixed picture. The rebels, for instance, still claim to hold Ras Lanouf, where they say they have Gaddafi's forces on the back foot.
We are on the move to liberate our country. We are going to liberate Ras Lanouf from the dogs belonging to Gaddafi. Those bastards are a bunch of mercenaries.
And Brega, further east, also still seems to be out of Gaddafi's control. Two things are becoming clear. First of all is that increasingly the fighting's being concentrated around oil towns, which it's hardly surprising Gaddafi's so keen to reclaim, while his assets are being seized all over Europe. His forces are also keen to destroy arms dumps in the hands of rebels. This one went up in flames in Benghazi, although it's not clear how. Secondly is that the fighting's becoming harder, and all the reports from the front line towns suggest more people being killed than in previous days. The main reason why the two sides in this are so deadlocked is because neither is strong enough. But all the same, it's hardly surprising that the words civil war are beginning to appear more frequently to describe what's happening in Libya. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Well, the situation in Libya's east is developing into a standoff between pro and anti-government forces, but a food crisis is also looming. From AlJazeera, here's Jackie Rowland.
This is something unheard of in AlJazeera, a bread queue. The bakery opened at 7 in the morning, and since then people have been standing in line. It's extremely unusual. Normally there would be absolutely no need to queue for bread. Well, as you can see, the problem isn't a shortage of flour. They've got sacks and sacks of the stuff. The wheat is imported. The flour mill is about 100 kilometres to the east of here, and they're not having any problems getting deliveries of flour. The problem is with the people who actually make the bread. Here in AlJazeera, most of the bakers are Egyptian. For example, the man who runs the bakery is an Egyptian. But the problem is that half of his staff ran away when the uprising began, so he was left with no one to produce the bread. So he's had to train local people in the art of bakery. It's pretty difficult because you've got people who have no experience at all. And the problem is that the people of AlJazeera are eating the bread more quickly than they can produce it. Bread is a real staple here, and it's very cheap as well. You get 20 of these loaves for 1 Libyan dinar. Now, at the moment, there is no shortage of things to eat. There's plenty of rice in the shop, cooking oil, basic foods like that. The problem is distribution, and there is a fear that if the fighting gets closer to AlJazeera, then the distribution lines may be cut, and at that point, there could be a real risk of people going hungry.
Jackie Rowland reporting there. Let's get an update now from Tony Bertley. He joins me live from Benghazi. That's in the east of Libya. Tony, just bring us up to speed with what's happening where you are in Benghazi and the general situation in the east of the country.
Yeah, well, Darren, you join me at a time when it's almost midday prayers, but also there's a very large turnout of people here, and it's to give the condolences to 13 members of the Civil Defence Force who died in an explosion at an arms dump last night. Lawrence Lee was mentioning in his report that arms dumps are a target by Gaddafi forces, and we're not yet sure what happened, but something between 13 and 30 people were killed and many more wounded when this arms dump, which is about 20 kilometres from the city, went up. There are suggestions that it was sabotaged, but yet no independent corroboration of that. But it's a big mass turnout here to give the condolences.
And as Lawrence was saying in his package, Tony, that it appears both sides are not strong enough militarily to take the advantage. Clearly, observers are saying now that this is going to develop, or could develop, into a standoff between both sides.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult at the moment to work out what the strategy is, both by Gaddafi's side and both by the opposition side. The opposition side is actually buoyed by a couple of minor victories, shall we say, and they're moving further west. But the main stronghold of Sirte is the real test. That's where 4,000 of Gaddafi's well-trained, well-armed fighters are, and that would be a stern test for anyone. I'm not sure yet that the opposition forces, who are increasing in number by the day, are really up to that task at the moment. They do have some heavy weapons, but I'm not sure they have the experience and